welcome to the Metal Bob Live podcast. I am your host, Metal Bob. Got co-host Bazooka Phil and guitarist of the Atomic Kings, Mr. Ryan McKay. Buddy, how you doing, Ryan?
I'm great, man. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time, man. It's great. So Bazooka Phil, man, he's the new co-host of the Metal Bob Live podcast. So we're going to put him to work today. He's got a bunch of questions he's going to ask you.
Okay, good, because I'm a fan of Phil Kubik project, man. That's a great record, great rock and roll record, man.
It's excellent.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
That's high praise coming from you, man. I'm a big fan of you, Christ Street Kids. I think you probably I've told you how great you guys are for a while now, but yeah, I can't get over that. That's just great music that you guys put out with that band, and you have a history of really cool stuff, and I'm excited to hear the new stuff with Atomic Kings. So anyway, let's get started. I wanted to hear about your influences. I know you probably told us a million times over, but would you share your influences? Like, who are you listening to that decided when you decided to become a guitar player, or what was that moment when you said,
there's a lot of influences, and as you get older, they kind of you add to it, right? So like as a kid, I grew up listening to Kiss, and that was my first rock and roll. Like, that's what rock and roll is. I remember being about 4 or 5 years old, and my older brother and my cousin, who's the same age as my brother, were playing the first Kiss album, and that was like first time I heard rock and roll. But while that was going on, my mom had disco records. So there was Donna Summer, there was Barry Manilow, and there was all this weird like pop stuff at the time. So I was exposed to all those different things. So when I finally, started picking up the guitar, my heroes were like the usual suspects, right? It was like Ace Frehley, of course, from Kiss, but it was also Eddie Van Halen, or all these Jeff Beck, Jimi Hendrix, all the Eric Clapton. And I grew up in this time where it was like shredders, right? It was late 80s. So and I was just learning, and I felt so insecure about my playing, and because I couldn't play like guys in the neighborhood could really shred and play fast and stuff, and I was always kind of embarrassed, and but my older brother had picked up a Momentary Lapse of Reason from Pink Floyd, and I put that record on, or CD. He just got a new thing called a CD player, and I put it on. I hear Signs of Life, and I hear this guitar playing of David Gilmour, and I was spellbound. And I thought, I'm going to do that because it speaks more to me. I never wanted to be like a shredder guitarist, but when I hear David's lyrical, melodic playing, I go, this really is what I'm all about. And it gave me some freedom there. So he was big. And then the other, so Ace, David Gilmour, and then the next one is Robin Trower. I remember flash forward a few years, I'm playing, I'm sharing a rehearsal space with another band, and everyone is older than me. They're all 21 and over, and they can go to the bars. And I was like 19 or 18. So they go to the bar, and I remember my friend Paul Buckman, who's still a great friend, a great mentor to me back in Quincy, Illinois, where I grew up. And he gave me a blank cassette, or like one of those cassettes, and like, this is Robin Trower. I think you will like him. And so I sat in the rehearsal space while they all went to the bar, and I listened to Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower like 3 times in a row. I was so mesmerized by that record and that sound. And so as far as guitar heroes, I think those were the ones that were very formative. Of course, you go on in life and you pick up all the other people. I like Tommy Bolin. I like John McLaughlin. I like all these different, Jeff Beck, I like all these people, but it's the one common thread is you're either adventurous or you're really lyrical and melodic. And anybody that does that, I'm a fan of.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge fan of the melodic guitar playing versus the shredding. And there was a moment, in my life when I got into the shredders, but it was always the melodic sound. I grew up with Kiss. That was my favorite band from the get-go when I was 6 years old. Yeah, absolutely right, man. That's awesome. Yeah, and so I can completely relate with what you just said. That's kind of been my avenue as a songwriter. Everything, I've wrote metal and I've done all that, but it all
5 years ago, it's weird. I just put a post out. I remember the day. It was in February, and this marks the 25th year, which is weird because now I've lived in Phoenix longer than I lived in Illinois. And I grew up Illinois. That's all which blows my mind because like when you're 10 years old, a decade is your entire life. But when you're
right,
my age, I'm 50. So like a decade ain't shit, right?
right.
Blows my mind. Like to me, Illinois was everything. That's where I grew up. I still have great friends and family there. Phoenix was a great move for me. It was at a time in my life. I mean, when you're 25 years old or 24, you know, you kind of get at a crossroads where you got to make a decision. And I always wanted to be a musician, and I knew I couldn't do it in Quincy. I love that town, but I just had to move. I had to go somewhere. Thank God for my brother Kevin, who was the same guy that turned me on to Kiss's first record. He had gone to Arizona State University and loved it and got a job out in Phoenix. And I was like, take me with you, please, take me with you. And it was just a great move for me because I got to reconnect with my brother. I got to really hang out with my cousin a lot and their family, so it wasn't like I left and didn't have anybody. I had some family here, and just had new roots, and I met a lot of great musicians and just hit the ground running. When I got here.
I actually moved to Phoenix when I graduated in '88 and moved down to Phoenix and lived there for a year. And I tell you what, being from a small town and then going to Phoenix, Arizona, and all the suburbs and man, any hour of the day you can do whatever you want. And tell you what, for a farm boy from the middle of Nebraska, it ate me up pretty good.
Oh, really?
After a year, it ate me up and chewed me up and spit me out and sent me back home. But I love Phoenix, man. That was a fun time.
It can do that. I got lucky. I mean, I met my wife, Michelle. She's been a rock, keeping me together. I had my brother. So I had people to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow where I wouldn't get chewed up and spit out. Like, I had a support system. So that was a big deal. And that means everything,
Yep.
We can tout about, oh, this music is this, and you really worked hard for your music. It's like, well, I can't do it without the people around me. They've supported me and believed in me.
Yep. Well, that's great. That's great. So now I read in there that you were a guitar teacher. Are you still teaching, or is that something that you've stopped doing?
I love teaching. I don't do it anymore. I one of the things, like when I met my drummer in Crash Street Kids, A.D. Adams, I remember having a beer with him and watching football on a Sunday, and we had just kind of getting to know each other. And he's like, "Yeah, I teach." I go, "Oh, okay. How many students you got?" And he said, "I got 50." I got, you got 50 students? And what do you charge for? Like $15 for? And I looked at him. I was like, "Oh, that's a thing." Because growing up in a small town, it was $5 for a lesson, and you might have 10 students. So you got beer money basically. Yeah. But I learned quickly that from AD, and AD's a fantastic teacher too, man. I've sat in on his lessons or like eavesdropped on his lessons. He's a really good teacher. So he was instrumental in getting me into that. And then now, so I've got that in my head, like I could teach. And so I started teaching at Metro Music when it was open in Glendale, Arizona. And I lied. I said I had 10 students. I had one. And I got in there and I started teaching. And the people at that store, the owner, Tracy Williams, was another mentor in my life. Like he was so smart, brilliant guitar player, teacher at heart. And anytime I had a question about music theory or anything, and then we would challenge each other. And Jeff Finley was another teacher there. Again, you just have these people in your life that really help you develop as a musician. So Jeff Finley was another teacher, and he moved to California, so I inherited his student load. So I now have 50 students, and that was like in 2003. And yeah, so I was a full-time teacher for about 10 years or so, till the store closed, and then I brought a lot of students into my own studio. And but the problem is, what's great, you have foot traffic in the store, so if you lose 4 students one week because they just drop off, 4 more come on. But if I have no foot traffic in my own studio, so as much as I hustled, I couldn't, and it just went down and down and down. So it got to be like where I just taught like 10 students, and now I'm just so busy, I don't do it anymore. But it's been a great joy of my life. You know, the great thing about teaching is that you always have to be on top of your game. You have to like prepare lessons. You're always playing. You're always thinking about chords and melody and theory and all that stuff. And so because I had students that were doing like some really heavy jazz and stuff like that. So yeah. And so me and Jeff, before he moved, like we would sit together with jazz charts and go through them and find out interesting harmony and all that stuff. And it's just really like developed me as a songwriter, you know, because now you have all that shit in your head, right? You know,
Right. That's great. Well, you covered my follow-up question is how is translating out into your, you know, your expression as a guitar player and as a songwriter, as a musician as a whole. So great. I tell you what, I've been kind of anxious to talk to you about this. Let's talk Christ Street Kids. Sorry. Yeah, I love that stuff. That glam sound that you guys had, and I heard it described. I don't know whether you described it as punk meets glam kind of sound. Which you think that's a good description for it? Because I kind of do. I think that's a great description for it.
I think so. I'd throw in like theatrical in there too, like a theatrical punk glam thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. I got hooked. Man, just listening to the first album, I was like, you know, come on, comes on. I'm like, wow, holy crap, this is great. And I hear all of those influences come out when you're talking about, you know, the different guitar players and stuff, the Kiss riffs. There's, you know, you can hear some of that influence coming through. Yeah, on the writing on that. So, so your albums were all concept albums. I'm super fascinated by that. So how did that materialize? I mean, did you intentionally set out to write concept albums, or did it just happen?
In the very beginning, like the very first record, there wasn't a concept. And then what happened with that very first record is me and AD, we did basically that entire record by ourselves. We got Deuce and Ricky right at the end. So like maybe there's one thing where Ricky plays a solo on, but that's everything else is just me and AD. And what happened in the middle of that first record, we were recording it, and I got into a car accident. I was hit head on by a drunk driver, and I was hospitalized and nearly lost my life, which is insane. Like,
wow,
horrible. But I had some time. I had a broken hand, and I remember telling the paramedics, like, I think my hand is broken. And okay, we'll take care of that. I go, no, you don't understand. I'm a guitar player. It's my left hand. I need it. And they're laughing, you know, taking me to the hospital, the ER. And it was very traumatic. She nearly died, the lady that hit me. But so anyway, so that sidelined that project for a while, but it gave me time to think about like what that first album could actually be. And I was convalescing, and I couldn't play guitar. But I'm like, okay, we need a couple more pop songs. And we also need to make this record like it's a big concert from the 1970s. And that was where the concept began. So we did that record, and that's the whole premise of the first record, is like it's a concept album in the sense that we want to make it like it's a concert from the 1970s. And then when we go to the next record, well, what do you do next? Well, let's peel the curtain back and see who's behind this concert from the 1970s. So we hatched this plan about the kid, and obviously this Chemical Dogs record that's the second record, and it talks about drugs, groupies, and all the things that we all know, the trappings of rock and roll. and it became more theatrical as well, and which I love because we always pushed it a little bit further into like more like now we're like more like Queen, you know. We were always kind of Cheap Trick, like we're like Cheap Trick or whatever, but like now we're Queen, like we're trying to get a little more grandiose, highfalutin.
Yeah.
And so then the third album comes along and we go, now what do we do with this kid that we've created? Well, we've had this sort of like semi-romantic relationship with this groupie. Maybe he falls in love with her. And maybe, you know what? And I, you know, God bless AD, he goes along with it. Or, you know, we're drinking whiskey or AD's like,
Right.
I go, AD, check this out. What if he's from the future and he's part of an experimental time travel program, and he has to go back. He's in love with this groupie that he kicked off the bus on the last record, but he wants her to come with him because they're pulling him back. And that's the third album, which is my favorite. It's not maybe the best Crash Street, but it's my favorite. Chemical Dogs is probably the one you want to start with if you haven't heard Chemical Dogs. That's the one you start with because it's
Well,
like the best.
and you didn't you won an award for one of the songs off there?
Yes,
What was that? The Leapers.
Andy and the Leapers.
Yeah, didn't you win a award for that?
Song of the Year Hollywood Fame Awards at the Whiskey.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was super cool.
Totally.
Yeah, Chemical Dogs, man, that's a great album.
Yeah, that's the best one.
Yeah, you know, I'm partial to the first one, but when I listen to the second one, yeah, the groove on that one is really cool. I love the last song, the lyrics in the last song, Illusion.
Yes, yeah. Gosh, it was so fun to put that stuff together because so track one, side one of Chemical Dogs tells the story of a boyfriend of the groupie, right? So him and the girl go to see the show. She wants to meet the singer, and he loses her because of that. That is a true story for me. Like that happened to me. When I was a kid, I was probably 16 or 17 years old, and we went to go see a band, and it was like a blind date kind of thing, and me and this girl, we went on this date, and so we go to see the band, and the band's partying back at the hotel. So we all go back to the hotel, and he's got like a fanny pack, and he's got a little eyedropper full of acid, and he doses the girl I was on the date with. Well, she flips out, obviously, like 40 minutes later. She flips out. We lose her, and we had to find her. She was like in a cornfield in Illinois. Yeah, true story. So I wrote this song, The Chemical Dogs. It's a true account in some sense. I drove all night just to find her. There's a lyric in there. That is true. That happened. And
wow.
There's all kinds of cool like things. And when you get to Illusion, which is the last song on the record, it's the boyfriend talking like, go back to your star, you know, go back and do that and see how that works out for you. Like Bitter. So I got to exercise, you know, that vibe.
That side of
it. Yeah. So, I mean, these are stories that, you know, obviously didn't matter to me that much, you know, but in the sense that like we never dated again. Like I never saw her again. We got her and it's like, whoa, I'm not dating. And I, you know, went on and dated other girls. But it's just like a weird thing that is in my memory. What a weird night that was. I did this blind date with this girl. She ends up in a cornfield on acid because this dude dosed her. You know, we gotta write a song.
And it ends up in a song. Yeah. Yeah. That is a song. I mean, not just a story, but it's a song. So yeah. Perfect. Yeah. I tell you, I can't say enough about the CSK music, man. And you were the main songwriter in that band, right? You wrote all the material except a couple co-writes with AD or something.
Right.
But
I was the songwriter, and AD is an incredibly talented and inventive person. So what we did is we divided the things. I'm the music guy, and he was like the branding, the stage show, the whole thing. It was like whatever his whims we would just do, and I'm like, I'm all for it. If you've ever seen the thing about Crash Street Kids, when we performed, and we didn't do a lot of shows, but when we did, we built out an entire stage full of scaffolding, and all this, and a brick background, and we would have teenagers would spray paint CSK on the back. We had cheerleaders, we had confetti cannons, we had bomb, everything. And that was all AD's thing. So like he was in charge of the whole branding thing, and I just did the music, you know. The
Wow.
music lives on, but like the stage show, if you saw it, I remember one time he goes, when we do Mandy and the Leapers, I said, yeah, I want to get a riser and I want to shoot you up in the air 20, 30 feet. I go, AD, I am afraid of heights. I'm not doing that.
Gene Simmons moment.
And he looks at me dead serious. He goes, you're Ryan McKay. You can do anything. Dead serious. Like and just like, holy shit, I believe AD. I think he's right. I think I can do it. And sure as shit, we got one of those things like a scissor lift. We skirted a scissor lift and it shot me 30 feet in the air. And
Wow.
the only thing on the scissor lift is me and the piano and a microphone and 30 feet of mic cable and 30 feet of piano cable, all skirted, so when it rose, all you see is a black curtain and me at the top. And sure as shit, we did that like 2 or 3 times. And it was like,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
That's cool. That's super cool, man.
Amazing. Well, our guy was Mick Treadwell, who did our first show. He promoted it, or he was the guy behind our first show, and he used to work for Pink Floyd, and he literally has David Gilmour's phone number in his phone. I'm like, please call him. Can I just say hi? And he's like, do that. But he's got a lot of great stories about like when he got a call from David Gilmour, and it was like, Mick, I've got to fire you from Pink Floyd. Oh, okay, Dave. I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, so you heard me say I fired you. Yeah, of course I heard it. All right, now, would you like to come work for me in Pink Floyd? Yes. All right, because it was all that Roger Waters shit.
Oh,
So yeah, you'll see like Mick Treadwell's name on Pink Floyd records from the 80s when they moved on and stuff. So yeah, that was a real,
wow.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude, Mick. We love Mick.
That's cool. That's cool. So what happened to the Christ Street Kids? So
yeah, we got to a point where, yeah, we did the 3 records. When AD and I started this thing, the goal was, and jokingly, we'll do 3 records and a double live. And ha 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 ha, that'll never happen. Well, sure as shit, we did it. We did 3 records, telling the story of the kid throughout 3 records, and then we did a double live record recorded at Alice Cooperstown, which is a pub in Phoenix. We did 2 sold out nights and recorded that live album, live from the waist down.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a barn burner. It's a bash fest, but it's like what you can hear confetti cannons going off. You can hear like teenage girls singing "Mr. Starlight." It was, I can't believe it. I look back and I go, did I actually do that? Oh, that's so then we were set to take that whole thing out on the road and really kind of make a push to go further with it. And we had this tour booked and everything fell apart. We had no vehicle. Our vehicle blew up in Gallup, New Mexico. We had to come home with our tail between our legs. And there wasn't anything for us to do except for, go back into Shabby Road and write another record. Well, my heart was broken, and I feel like we made such great music and no one's ever going to hear it. So I sat down and I wrote a song called Third Avenue Vampires, which is on Sweet Creatures. And that's, started that album, but it just wasn't, I can't listen to Sweet Creatures because it's a good record. It's not like it's a bad record, but everyone was deflated at that point, and we kind of just limped our way through that record and barely supported it. And it was like, we never officially broke up, but it was like, I think we've done everything we can do. At some point, you got to look at it and go, we moved mountains together, but I think we've moved all the mountains we can move. And so let's go ahead and move on. And that's when AD and I got the Louis Prima gig and did Louis Prima for a decade. And AD's still in Louis Prima.
Right.
And it was the right move. We did everything we could do with Crash Street. There wasn't anything else I have to say. We did 3 in the double live. We did Sweet Creatures, which is a disgusting, filthy record. Uh, but it's reflective of my attitude at the time. I was pissed. I was bummed. And I'm like, I'm not going to make records like this anymore. I want to do something different.
Gotcha. So, I was going to bring up the Louis Prima Jr. gig. So how did you get that gig? And I noticed at the same time you started the Shabby Road Record Show. You
Yeah,
started doing your own podcast.
Yeah, that was what a great decade that was.
Yeah.
Doing with Louis. I got a call. AD and I, we are friends, mutual friends. Well, AD introduced me to this guy called Mikey Bones, Michael Trevino. The first time we met, before Crash Street Kids, I had a band with me, AD, Pete Lauren from Trickster, and another guy, Germ, Tim Germani, Jeremy Germ, love him. But Germ couldn't do this gig. We're going to open for Great White at a club in Phoenix. And I was like, oh, cool, awesome. And but Germ couldn't do it. So my AD's like, let me call Mikey. So he calls Mikey Bones in, and it's the first time I met Mikey. He walks in and he goes, I like your songs, Ryan. Rhino, hey, I like your songs, And he goes, I can't wait to play and meet Jack again. I go, oh, you know Jack Russell? Oh yeah, we went shocking together. I go, you went
the shocking story.
I went shocking together. And I'm like, wait a minute, hang on. You went sharking with the lead singer of Great White? Yeah, of course. I think this guy's full of shit. This guy's full of shit. So Mikey's a great bass player. He learned the tunes in second flat. We do the gig. And I go, Mikey, you okay? He's like, I'm home. I'm home on stage, man. And he fucking killed it. So we walk backstage and there's Jack Russell. Here comes Mikey. He walks up to Jack Russell. The two of them are hugging it out. And as I remember that time we went sharking, I was like, holy shit, this guy's for real. He actually went sharking. So anyway, that project, I'd written the songs for that project, and Mikey and I stayed in touch. We went on to do Crash Street Kids after that. Mikey moved to Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, he meets Louis Prima Jr. And Louis tired of using these stuffy jazz musicians to do that stuff. He's like, because Louis Prima Jr.'s favorite band is AC/DC. He's like, I want some rock and rollers. And nice. Mikey is a rock and roller through and through. Mikey's like, I can get you players. I know some players. So I get a call out of the blue. Rhino, hey, I got a gig for you. You'd be perfect for it. I go, yeah, okay, what is it? You play jazz, right? I go, yeah, I've been teaching students jazz or whatever. He's like, Louis Prima Jr. I go, who's that? He had to tell me. And so then at the same time he called AD, like, AD, you gotta come up here in Vegas and audition for Louis Prima Jr. I'm like, okay. So AD and I are rock and rollers. We're not like jazz swing players. And so we ended up me and him, AD, at his place, rehearsed this stuff. It was awful. We're terrible at it. And AD's, we're both going, I think we're going to embarrass ourselves. I don't want to meet this Louis Prima guy. Like, he's like a freaking legend, But we did a second rehearsal and we felt comfortable enough to go up to Vegas and actually do the audition. Well, so we do it. AD slays it. I played I did what I did. And, Mikey told us later, we got the gig. Let's go out for a drink, And Mikey's like, you had the gig all along. You didn't even have to do this. So, yeah, Mikey, just the greatest, rest in peace, one of the greatest guys you've ever met. So he got us that gig with Louis, and me and Louis are best of friends. Michelle and I went out to go see Louis last October or whatever, hung out in New Orleans. He lives in New Orleans. The experiences that we've had with Louis are just amazing. We've traveled halfway across the world. We've done every state. We always on the road, and we recorded 2 records at Capitol Records in Hollywood. Just amazing experiences. So I love, that was such a good fit, especially coming off of Sweet Creatures, Crash Street Kids record, where I was like at a low ebb. Suddenly you get this Louis Prima gig, and it's like, I don't
energy.
And honestly, like, I was really looking forward to not being a front man. I'm not really a natural front man. It was really hard for me to do the Crash Street Kids thing because I was never the lead singer of a band like that. I was always uncomfortable. So I loved just being in the background and hitting the rhythm section. Me and my brother AD and my brother Mikey, just the three of us on our own little platforms in the back of that stage, backing up Louis, who's a great front man. It was just the perfect thing.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I never wanted to be a front man for our band, and that was something that Beck he talked me into doing it. I don't regret it, but he's like, no, if you're doing your own album, doing your own music, and you got your name on it, you're singing it. Period. That's all. Yeah, I'm like, okay, fine, I'll try it.
You got a really good voice, Phil.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I was never a lead singer in a band, cover bands and stuff that we did. I would sing a few songs, but I never, yeah. And it just never, I was more the guitar player. I play a few leads, play the rhythm, and that was kind of my thing. And so being forced into that role, it was like, oh crap, now what do I do? Yeah. I gotta get, learning that, how to be a front man and what I got to do. And got to take care of my voice. I got to think about things, differently when I approach shows. And yeah, it was changed. So I completely get that.
Yeah. And for me, like Crash Street Kid stuff was so out of my range. Like I was always at the top of my range, like singing F sharps and G's and G sharps.
That sounded so freaking good.
That's what it does sound good if I get there. But I like when you're doing gigs, you can't really hit that every night.
Right.
I had to really take care of myself. I'm drinking hot tea. I'm doing vocal warm-ups, and
everybody else is partying, and
they're all partying. And I'm back, in the bowels of Alice Cooperstown before our live album, and I'm sipping on. Everyone else is like, yeah, we can't wait. Yeah. It's like, la 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 la.
Yep. I know exactly what you're saying, dude. That's me to a T. There's nights when I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hit these notes.
Exactly.
And you do what you do, and you go out there and give it your best. And usually you come through and you're able to hit the performance, but you're always like, wow, I don't know if I got it tonight. But interesting. The Sharkin story. I think that episode, and I Need a Bigger Bat, is like my favorite Shabby Road episode, man.
Yeah, we didn't talk
that is so freaking good.
Kind of glossed over it, but like in the middle of the Louis Prima thing, because AD and I are so creative, I was like, we got to do something else. I don't want to do a Crash Street Kids record, but I'm such a fan of podcasting, I was like, I want to do my own podcast. I listen to all these different podcasts. I think we probably listen to the same ones, the Kiss ones, or BJ at Rock and Roll Pods and Sods. And I'm like such a fan. I'm such a fan of that. I'm like, we could do one. So I talked to AD into it. First of all, I had to do a diagram of what a podcast is. It's like, think radio, AD, think radio. Okay, well, who's listening? People on the internet. He's like, well, how do we just trust me? So we started it, and the thing about the Shabby Road Record Show is that AD always had this great concept of like, the star of the show is not me and it's not you, Ryan. It's the room. It's Shabby Road. And that was such a great concept because we always talked about how dilapidated it was, how there's bums and whores and hookers outside, which is all true. And so we had this whole vibe in there, and there's an energy in that room. That's where Crash Street Kids made all the records. That's where all the after parties for Crash Street Kids happened. So that thing is legendary. Like there's literally a chalk outline of where Deuce passed out. and
So what's funny is you guys translated that well into your podcast. I mean, the stories and everything that just the vibe was so freaking cool.
That was AD's, again, he's like high concept, and I'm nuts and bolts, and he's high concept. And so his idea of like, we make the room the star of the show was so brilliant. I think, and we play to that, right? So we do that. That's what the show is. And absolutely brilliant. He's AD is killer, man. He's my brother. Love that guy. So
yeah, he's great. We're going to interview him down the line here.
You should
get him on the show too.
He is a party. That man is. We've moved mountains together. I mean, he's brother. We've been working together for 20 years, and every time we get together, it's just like riding a bike. We've got such history. I
keep threatening him that I'm going to come down and when you guys do the reunion show, Ty and I are going to come down and we're going to hang out. We're going to be in the background while you guys do the show and just get you drunk, buy you a whole bunch of, beers and whiskey, all that nasty stuff, dirty tequila.
We had so many great guests on that show over the years. We had Mikey, of course, on there. We're going to need a bigger that episode. I could hear Mikey tell that story for the rest of my life. I just love that story. But then we had Pete Lauren. We had from Trixer. We had Neil Merriweather, which Neil Merriweather is a great story because AD had this record back in Crash Street Kids days. He's like, dude, no one knows about this Neil Merriweather record. And we used to like make fun of like the outfits on the back, but the record is killer. And no one knows who Neil Merriweather is or whatever happened to him. Well, I found him on Facebook and we're playing a gig in Vegas with Prima. And I reach out to him. I go, dude, I found Neil Merriweather. And so I instant messaged him. Hey, I got 2 tickets for you to come see Louis Prima tonight at the whatever casino. And he responded. He's like, okay. And I was like, dude. And AD's face, man, when he met Neil Merriweather, I mean, we didn't know if this guy was living or dead or who he was. It was like, it's a mystery. It's a guy on a record and no one knows who he is. And so we got him to come to the show. And AD just, I mean, it was so great. And he brought with him this girl. Oh my God, I feel so bad. I'm blanking on her name. But she played with Michael Jackson. She's Michael Jackson's guitar player.
Oh, wow.
Unbelievable. Like
Braden? Jennifer Braden or is
No. Okay. Becky Barksdale. Thank you.
Okay.
From across the room, Becky Barksdale. Sweetheart. Love Becky Barksdale. But that first night that we met, we were so spazzed out by Neil Merriweather that it was like literally like, and this is my friend Becky. She played with Michael Jackson. That's great. Anyway, Neil. We were so nerded out.
I tell you what, I love the album. You guys turned us on to so much great music by bringing those albums in and playing some of that obscure stuff. And
it starts with AD. The whole thing starts with AD for sure. Wow,
that was brilliant. And thank you for that because well, thank you and damn you because now I'm spending money going out and buying, finding all these albums and adding them to my collection. So
I know.
My wife is like, son of a bitch, can stop buying all those albums.
Yeah. If only I had Phil Kobeck's money.
Oh, what? Yeah, right. Well, that's what my wife says too. You're spending money you don't have, but yeah, it was funny. Let's so you had Liz, you brought Liz in and Hal 5000, which is
we had Ricky, but Ricky Serrano, guitarist of Crash Street Kids. Love Ricky. I've known him since he was like 12. First time I met Ricky, he's the son of a singer called Gigi Dixon, and she's awesome, and she's a luminary in the valley here. And so I meet this little kid. He's like 14, I think he was 14, and this is my son Ricky. He plays guitar. Oh, cool, Ricky. What can you play? I learned all your solos on that Progress Avenue album. I'm like, really? Which is a record I did, in '98. And I go, well, play me one. And he plays me one, and he's perfect. He plays it in the same position and everything. So when it came time for Crash Street Kids, we did. It's like it was a no-brainer because Ricky's kind of glammy too. Like he's like got the look, and no one looks better with a Les Paul than Ricky Serrano. And it's like, dude, that's the guy. And he's friendly, funny. So we did the Crash Street Kids, and then we did the podcast, and he was like the perfect choice. And he brought in Hal 5000, and then he got too busy. He was working with Jenny Jarnigan and doing records, and so but Liz was hanging out, and so Liz was right there. It's like, Liz, you're next up in line to be the producer. To run the controls and be Sal 5000, which is the girl version of Hal 5000. So yeah, and Liz is awesome. She's a sweetheart, and she's totally down. When we do a reunion, we all can't wait. We just have to find a time when we're not so busy that we can do it, because I can't wait to do it again. And it's so great to hang out with AD and Liz, and you know, it's just like we're family. You know, it's so fantastic. It's gonna happen. I just don't know when. We keep threatening, but you know.
Yeah, well, we'll come down and buy some drinks if you ever do it. We'll fly down and make sure and be there for it, because
For
that's
sure.
going to be, yeah. Also, is that when you got into album collecting, or were you collecting before that? Is that something that you and AD started doing earlier, or how, or did he get you into it? How did that happen?
Just a little bit before. I started collecting records. One of my students, when I had my own teaching studio, one of my students was like, "Hey, I got some stuff for you. You can just have it." And he gave me a turntable and like a stack of like 20 records. I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. And I'll keep this here at my studio." But then it was back in the time when you can go to the local record store called Zia's here. Like I would go in the dollar bin and just like I just would just pick up 20 records and it would cost me like $30, you know, and just kind of doing the vinyl versions of the CDs I already know and love, right? So like, oh yeah, Frampton Comes Alive, sure. Led Zeppelin 4, okay. You know, and
Yeah.
and you just pick them up. And then I was like, you know, I don't even listen to my CDs. I've got all these CDs everywhere. And I might as well just get rid of them. So I would trade them in. So you trade them in and get store credit. And I would just turn it into vinyl. And so that's when the idea of the podcast is like, we should do a vinyl podcast. That's what it should be, you know?
Nice.
Me and AD, because AD has a great record collection. And then AD's friend, Mott, it sent him, because his wife is like, get rid of these records. And he mailed them to AD, and there was like 200 or 300. And
Wow.
yeah, which is
Wow.
insane. Yeah, so AD's off to the races, and now it's like a running gun battle, and the podcast grows and grows and grows. Yeah, you know, it's like now you're going to the record store looking for something weird to play on the show, and it just
So
goes.
what's your most valued album that you found that you're like, this is a gem that, you know, this is it. This is the album.
Oh man,
Or are you still searching?
yeah, I've got some really really good ones that have grown in value over the years. Like things like I just put on the over here's the Big Star record, which I bought for $12.99 at the record store. It's a reissue of the original Big Star. You go online, they don't make them now, and it's like $200.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
the other one too. My mom lives in Sun City, Arizona, and she does estate sales, and she oftentimes will call me and go, "Can you help us move some furniture?" Blah blah blah. And they got records. I'm like, "Ooh, okay, I'll be right over." And it is from Seattle. Like he's going into a retirement home or whatever and selling all of his stuff. And I'm going through his records and I find the original, the Sonics, the band the Sonics, the original first album. I'm like, well, thanks for helping us out. I mean, do you want anything? We could pay you money, or like, how about I buy this for like $10? And so, okay, so I gave her 10 for the original pressing of the Sonics, which is about $400.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my
Wow.
most valuable one. You know, yeah, it's like old original from a local band. It's basically a local band record. You know,
Wow, that's cool.
that's a cool one. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how you get met with Greg, and you've been with Greg now for a while. You know, Kings of Dust, which was Metal Bob's 2020 album of the year pick.
It was.
Nice. Really?
I'll let Bob jump in here and ask some questions too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a great record. Yeah, in 2020, I named it the album of the year. I was really taken back by, you know, it had that old school, like 70s, early 80s vibe, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Me and Greg got into contact. Well, actually, it was AD that I think that called me, but apparently Greg had called AD, like they were looking for a guitar player, and he wanted a specific type of guitar player, one that wasn't like a shredder that plays like a Jackson, with
Right.
a rose. he wanted like there was a 70s element to it. And he's like, AD, I'm looking for this guy. The only one I could think of is this dude that used to play with Scotty Hammonds and them at Joe's Grotto back in like 99. And he's blonde hair, he plays Strat, sings too. He's like, who was he play with? Scotty Hammonds and them guys? Are you talking about Ryan? Is that his name? Ryan. Yeah, Ryan McKay. Do you know him? Do I know him? We were on the cover of the fucking New Times, dude. And Crash Street Kids. So anyway, AD calls me, goes, Greg Chason is looking for you. I said, Greg Chason, the dude from Badlands? Oh yeah, okay, cool. So here's his number. So I called him, and that started me and Kings of Dust. Now it went through a whole long thing. This was happening during the Louis Prima years. In that decade, we're doing the podcast, we're doing, Prima.
Right.
And anyway, so I went down. There was a song called "And the Wolves," which is on the King's Dust record, and I was like, dude, that's a great riff. So yeah, I'll play some solos to that. So I went in and we played, we recorded, but we just couldn't find the right drummer. We went through like 2 or 3 different drummers and just wasn't feeling right. Not that they were bad drummers, but there's a feel. You've got to have this right to get that right feel. And it was Jimmy Taft that ended up being there, who was a wonderful, amazing drummer. Man, I've been so blessed to work with AD and Jimmy Taft. Those guys are absolutely astonishing drummers. But so Greg gets stage 4 cancer, and the whole project is halted. And thankfully, Greg recovered, and he's doing great. He's in remission, has been for years now. But in that time where the band was basically on hold indefinitely, I'm back to Louis Prima, and that's my bread and butter. That's my main source of income. Now I'm not teaching anymore. I'm just doing the road stuff with Louis, and that's my main source of income. So, but Greg was like, if you want to do this, you have to like just do this. This is your only thing. And I'm like, nah. So they got another guy who played guitar called Michael Arms, very good guitar player. But then at some point they were like getting frustrated with him, and they called me back. And so I finished the Kings of Dust record as sort of a hired gun. And then now it's Atomic Kings, and
right.
It's like a new focus so I didn't really write anything on that Kings of Dust record. And now with Atomic Kings, I'm a writer and have more of I'm more invested in the whole thing. So
okay, well, I think you're credited with a couple tracks in there. Yeah, That's Me.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I got that. And they
because I was going to say that has that Kiss style riff in there, and I assumed that was you.
That's what got me back into the fold, is that they wanted to do that song, and I demoed all this stuff already. So the whole record's been, well, say for a few songs, but a lot of that stuff, like Yeah, That's Me, is one of them that I demoed back before. Like, I mean, this is like 3 years, 3-4 years, and I had to go back and go, I don't know what I played. And so I found an old copy of it. I go, oh yeah. So the guitarist they had just wasn't getting the vibe. Great guitarist, but just there's a certain attitude or vibe. The Kiss thing, like if someone doesn't listen to Kiss, and when they're 5 years old with their older brother and their cousin, like, you don't get it. Like,
right.
So they had me come in, and Michael Beck went to bat for me, like, let's just have Ryan finish out the record, because it's like that's the sound,
Yeah, you're
so thanks.
Sounded great.
If people don't listen to Kiss, they can't be trusted. That's what I was always told.
Totally.
You're speaking the truth there. I'm a huge Kiss fan. But so you do YouTube videos for the store for Bizarre Guitars, right?
Yeah.
And I love those videos. So, and that's the other cool thing. You get to play all those guitars, all the new guitars that come in, and try everything out. And then they're like, oh, well, I'll just take this one home. This is, anyway, I didn't want to mention that because those videos are great. Why don't we jump into your your new solo albums. So you did two.
I did two. Yes.
Okay, well, we'll start with the first one because there's a lot to unfold here. So the
Yeah.
first one's not a concept album, right? So the one, Ryan McKay and the Broken Brains.
Yeah, that's it.
If everybody can see that,
Nice.
great.
Nice. Yeah. It's conceptual in the sense that every song is about some form of a broken brain or another. So when I left, when Crash Street Kids was over, I went to Louis Prima. I wrote a little bit with Louis Prima. We did some, well, we did two records together, but I was part of a collaborative. So I hadn't really written my own music since Sweet Creatures. And so 2020 hits, and obviously that was tough on everybody, especially, you know, being a musician that made his bread and butter on the road with Prima. You know, Greg is offering me a gig at the store, so I made the decision to quit Louis Prima and just work at the store because it's consistent. Because I didn't know what this is going to be on the other side, right? Like you don't know the other side of COVID what's going to happen. So I was like, okay, well, I'm now going to start focusing on making a solo record, which I've never made a solo record. I've made them, but I've never released them. And so the thing is, as I said in one of my videos on my YouTube channel, is that songwriting is a muscle, and if you don't use it, it atrophies. And so the very first, you know, batch of tunes I started writing, I hated everything. Like I think I freaking lost it. I don't even know what I'm, because you know, I suck at this, you know. But at some point, you kind of get one song going. That's a good song. Okay, cool. And then you write 3-4 other shitty ones. Then you get another one. And like, okay, there's those two. Then you write 3-4 other shitty ones. Oh, that one. There's 3. You know. And so the Broken Brains is kind of that process of getting what my sound would be. And I also had no idea what my solo record would be like. Like I don't even know who my audience is. Like I don't even know. No one remembers Crash Street Kids. No one knows what I've done. I could be anything, I guess, in some sense. So there's some freedom involved in that. And then at the end of the day, the Broken Brains, what made the cut was that, is it a good song? Is it personal? You know, does it make sense to you? Are there elements of the song that relate to me? So like it was always the song, like song first. And so that's what the Broken Brains is. So it kind of runs the gamut. Like you hear elements of Crash Street Kids in it. You hear me just kind of attempting things. But if it's a good song, it's a good song. That's the thing. It's a song first.
One thing I noticed is there's so many textures to it. You've done a great job, you know, instrumentation wise, and just I found it. It seemed very personal and intimate, and so that's one thing that really stood out to me, and I was like, wow, man, this is it's similar to the Crash Street Kids, but yet you've expanded yourself out and probably shown a little bit more of your influences, things that have happened through the years that have impacted you on your writing. And so I just love the album. It's great stuff, and I think I've told you this a few times, but Here Comes the Demons, that's still my favorite song, though. After hearing some of the stories behind, you know, Wave After Wave is another really cool one. I picked up one of the references to your wife's pop 80s tunes. So you got the Corey Hart, you know. But I didn't get the other one. I was digging through and I still couldn't find the other one on that.
I'll tell you. I'll give it away. Here Comes the Rain Again.
Oh, okay. Here Comes the Rain Again. Yep. Rhythmics. Great.
Little Easter eggs in there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Fun about. So when a song has all that stuff going for it, it makes the record. You know, there's a lot. I mean, I probably wrote 30 songs, and there's 12 on the album. So you know, you kind of weed through and find the ones that really matter. And it you know, you have to abandon, like, it's not really like one cohesive sound all the way through the record. It's like really varied. And I'm proud of that
Yeah.
because I am a varied songwriter. I always want to push myself forward. I don't want to make the same record over and over again. And I think going back to Sweet Creatures, it's a good record, don't get me wrong, but that was the last record we did because I didn't feel like I pushed that band further. And I was very frustrated, and I felt like I let them down. And I'm like, I'd rather not do it because I don't have it in me to do another record like this. And so I move in now and doing my solo stuff. It's like I can do anything I want. It's like I'm in you're seeing my studio here. It's a lab.
Yeah.
Like I told Michelle this morning, that song I did last week, I started writing a new song, and I know it's a really kind of like a normal chord progression, but I want to make it unrecognizable by the time I'm done with it. And I want to smear it all over the place and see what happens when it's a lab. I'm in a lab, like a mad scientist, and that's what
great.
My solo career to be is like, I don't know what this idiot's doing now. He can sing, he has a tune, he can carry a tune with his voice, but it's so, what is he doing?
Nice.
That's what I want.
Another great thing about this is your family. It's you and your family. You have your kids doing graphics and artwork for you, and your wife and all of them adding little vocal bits and whatnot, percussion.
Yeah.
So talk about that. That's kind of cool.
It's really cool.
I couldn't be more proud of my family. Like, they've been such great supporters. First of all, my wife, obviously keeping my career on pat. Like, if it wasn't for Michelle, I'd have no career, because she kind of supported me through the lean years of not really making any money. And just, she's been my soulmate forever, wave after wave, just listen to that song.
Yeah.
And then my daughter, Zoe, is a tremendous artist. She's so talented. And so she drew all the stuff, if you look at that's Zoe's art.
Yep.
So look at Ryan McKay and the Broken Brains. That's my son, Alex, who's laying all that stuff out on a PDF file, taking care of that end of the business, a family business.
Nice.
All these years that I played with Crash Street Kids, Louis Prima, and doing all this stuff, they are just on the sidelines, and when it came time to do my solo record, I'm like, I don't think it's necessarily needs to be a Ryan McKay record. I think it needs to be us in this house. Everyone that has been with me all these years, my kids and my wife, I wanted to have them participate in all this and see the creative process and be part of the creative process and see how that all works. And I couldn't be more proud of them. They're so talented, all of them,
Yep.
and just, I get to kind of go, and it's these guys too, it's not just me, it's these guys,
Yeah.
So very, very happy. It just looks stunning. I mean, I do the music, and they give it an image, and
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I thought that was really cool, that you brought your family in on it, and and all the talent that you have in that household, period. I mean, that obviously shows. I just do want to mention that if you get the bonus, you get the bonus. This is a concept album that Ryan put out as a bonus CD.
Yeah.
When you buy the bonus package. Ryan, I know we're taking up a lot of your time. So if you don't mind, let's jump into the top 5 albums from 1988.
My fault picking 1988, man. When I got to doing the research, I'm like, oh, that was a great year. I'm like, I almost
do these segments. Yeah, we do these segments, and he comes up with all these like, hey, let's do 1988. And then you start researching it and you're going, holy cow, dude. Did you think about this? 5 songs? Or 5 albums? Anyway.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where you guys are going to fall on this. I feel like we're going to be overlapping a lot, because I didn't realize, to me, like 1988 was a bit of a rough year. I think that there's some albums that are just, okay, we'll get into it, but it was a struggle for me to find 5 really good records. But I'm very excited about this discussion. It was really fun to find these records.
Yeah, I think Bob, why don't you start us off, and we'll just if you want to do should we do all five and then just
Sure.
Ryan do all five and then I'll close it with my five?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can do that, man. Just throw me right in the fire, Phil. That's great.
Heck yeah,
Appreciate it,
man. You've been sitting
Cheers.
there being quiet, drinking, yeah, having a good old time there.
Drinking,
And I'm
drinking
like,
my.
dude, jump in here.
That's my near beer.
Ryan and I are having the conversation. We're like, Bob, I didn't mean to leave you out, bud.
Oh, you're great, man. That's we knew going into this was the Phil Kobeck show today, man.
Whatever. Whatever.
Well,
This
I'll
is your
start.
show.
I'll start at 5. Like I said, these are really in no particular order. The number 1 is my favorite from that year, but we'll go with number 5. We'll go with Slayer, South of Heaven. I always thought that was kind of a game changer for the whole metal scene at that time. I know that Slayer had been around for a while before that, but that was kind of their groundbreaker. Was the South of Heaven. At number 4, I had Danzig.
Ooh.
Self-titled Danzig record. I still think that's probably his best record. I know he's done a lot of other good things, but I always turn to that one when I listen to Danzig.
Cool.
At number 3, I had the Bullet Boys self-titled record. I was always a big Bullet Boys fan. Shoot the Preacher Down, Smooth Up in You. The cover for Love and Money was a great record. And they went on to do a lot of other great records too, but that record's a classic. 1988, Bullet Boys self-titled. Number 2, I had Anthrax, State of Euphoria. Big Anthrax fan. That's my favorite Anthrax record. It just happened to come out in 1988. And then this is going to be no surprise to anybody that knows me. L.A. Guns self-titled is my all-time favorite record from 1988. They are my favorite band. Being a little biased, but that is a great record.
Oh yeah.
I know LA Guns kind of always got clumped into the whole hair metal thing, and I don't like to use that term, but that's what everybody says all the time. But
sleaze rock.
But LA Guns was different. I thought, they were a little more punk, a little more grunge, a little heavier than a lot of the stuff that came out in that year. So, yeah, that's my top 5, man, from 1988.
Very well.
Cool.
Good job. We did not overlap at all, Bob.
Well, that's good. That's good.
That's good. I like that. That's awesome. The great choices too. I forgot about the LA Guns record. I probably should have looked into that.
It's a great record.
All right, Ryan, you're up.
Oh shit. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm going to go with again, like Bob said, no particular order. Number 1, Queensryche, Operation.
Operation, yeah.
Yep.
That is a brilliant record. Jeff Tate is singing his balls off on that record, and it's challenging. It's a concept album. I'm a big fan of concept albums, as Phil would probably know.
Yeah.
So obviously that's my number 1 and I hadn't heard it in so long. I'm like, oh yeah. And I was playing it on Spotify just to kind of for today's thing. And Michelle comes walking and she goes, that's a fucking great record. I go, I know. And I looked for my vinyl copy. I don't have a vinyl copy of it. So I ordered one on Amazon. So you guys just cost me $37 because
that was Bob. He'll be sending you a check.
Phil will pay you back. He's loaded. That guy's loaded.
Whatever. You guys.
Just like Phil said, like the Shabby Road Record Show cost him so much money. Like,
right.
This podcast cost me Operation My Kind. Okay.
Hey, we're just getting you back, bud.
So my friend Casey Lynch once said about this record, it is the best, worst Iron Maiden album. It's called Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And it should have been a concept album, but they chickened out at the last minute.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really good. Moonchild is killer. The Evil
Infinite Dreams.
Infinite Dreams. The Clairvoyant. The Clairvoyant. It sounds like they're just like sticking songs together. It's so strange. It's the best, worst Iron Maiden album. The Seventh Son of a Seventh Son.
I've never heard it put that way, but that's interesting. The worst,
Lynch.
best Iron Maiden album.
All right, let's go to. All right, I hate to do this, but I put this in my list because it taught me how to sing harmony back when I was in middle school when it came out, or what was I, sophomore or whatever, 1988. But Bon Jovi's New Jersey.
Great record.
Hey, that's a great record. Yep.
It's, you know, it borrows a lot from many sources, including Bruce Springsteen, of course. But it's the harmony when John and Richie are singing. It taught me how to sing harmony, like where you can, because Richie's voice is so you can hear it's Richie. And so like his notes, I was able to copy those. And so me and my friend Jay Briscoe, who I went to high school with, and he was kind of started me on this path of singing. He was a great singer, great singer. And he would make me sing harmony. And New Jersey comes out, and now I could really hear what a harmony singer is doing. So the John and Richie thing is Jay and Ryan. So I was able to pattern. So I put that on there. There's some great songs on that record too. I revisited that record. Blood on Blood, Living in Sin, Wild as the Wind. Homebound Train. Don't forget about that. Go listen to Homebound Train and listen to freaking Tico. Killing it.
Yeah.
Killing it.
Yeah.
It's a good record.
It's a good sounding record too.
Yep.
Yeah, Bob Rock. All right, moving on. We did that. Number 4, Traveling Wilburys, Volume 1.
Nice.
Nice.
Just love that record. They did a great job with their songwriting. You get all these great. You got Dylan, you got Roy Orbison, you got Jeff Lynne, Harrison, Petty. I think it's one of the best ways to experience Bob Dylan, because a lot of people are like, when Bob Dylan is there's a song called Congratulations, and Bob Dylan is at his best when he's snarky and pissed off at you. And Blood on the Tracks is the best Bob Dylan record, but there's a song called Congratulations on the Traveling Wilburys record, kicks off side 2. It's so smarmy. Congratulations, you broke my heart. Yeah, like it's such a cool twist of phrase. And he's got Tweeter and the Monkey Man on there.
Yep.
Yeah, it's such great. I mean, Handle with Care, of course. Just such great stuff, on that record. And last but not least, the record that points towards the future, Jane's Addiction's Nothing Shocking.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So it's 1988, and this is what the future is going to hold. My old band, and it's not 88, but it's like 91, we were playing this stuff in the middle of the hair band stuff. We were playing Pigs in Zen. We played Jane Says. We did all this, and it was so interesting and cool. And it became the sound of the 90s, which I'm not a big fan of, but I love Jane's Addiction because they started it in some sense. That's Nothing Shocking is a fantastic record. There's things you forget about on that record, like Summertime Rolls, Mountain Song, and Ocean Size. Those are just colossal freaking songs that were so revolutionary at their time. So there you go. There's
that's great. That's a great list. Surprised me a little bit too, with the Jane's Addiction. That caught me a little bit by surprise.
I had a feeling that was going to slip in there somewhere.
You thought?
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge record. I mean,
yeah,
it doesn't surprise me.
I was in my full-on metal phase at this point, even though that was my main listening pleasure. I was listening to everything. A lot of my favorite songs come out of that year for different artists. Rod Stewart,
nice.
Forever Young is one of the songs that came out. But anyway, I'll jump to my list. And again, not really in any order, but a little bit. My number 5, Bob and I was talking about this earlier, and I forgot this album to put it on there, but Rick Springfield's Rock of Life album. I was going to grab it, but I'm like, the Rock of Life album by Rick Springfield is, I'm a huge Rick Springfield fan, which may, surprise people, but that album is just killer. Honeymoon in Beirut. There's just so many great songs, and Rick Springfield is a great songwriter, very melodic. He's everybody knows him for Jesse's Girl, but there's a lot of textures in his albums through the years. And if anybody, you'll experience a lot of different sides of what Rick Springfield can do as a writer. Awesome. And so again, big fan of Rick Springfield. So that's my number 5, which took the place of Brittany Fox. But number 4, Ram It Down, Judas Priest. Nice. It's not a big, well-known Priest album. And the only reason why I picked this is because I was huge into Priest at the time.
Okay.
I still am. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. And there's a couple songs like I'm a Rocker, Under Blood Red Skies, Blood Red Skies off that album that are just killer songs. The album as a whole may not be, a top 10 album for them in if I had to rank all their albums. But for some reason that has a special place. Just because, again, that's the year I graduated. I was listening to a lot of Priest and everything, so it had to be in there. No Rest for the Wicked by Ozzy. When that album came out and Zach was introduced to the world, I tell you what, man, I was blown away. And that's still, I still rate that one over No More Tears. I just love that album, Breaking All the Rules, Demon Alcohol, obviously the big hits, Crazy Babies. But my number 2, Second Sighting from Frehley's Comet.
I was wondering if one of us was going to pick that one.
I had to go with it, man. Insane, Fallen Angel. Todd Howarth had a great album. That album, he had a couple great songs in there. It's Over Now and Fallen Angel. Insane. That's a great Frehley's Comet album. It's everybody's. The first one was it'd been so long from hearing from Ace that it gets most of the recognition. But that was a good album. And I enjoyed that one. And it had to be on the list because, again, Ace Frehley is one of my favorites of all time. Yep, right there. And then finally, this is where we kind of overlap. Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son.
That's where we overlap. Finally.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. Well, and there's a lot of honorable mentions in there. David Lee Roth, Skyscraper, Kicks, Blow My Fuse. I mean, there's Operation Mindcrime was right there. Lap of Luxury by Cheap Trick, Winger's first album. And there's so many great albums. And I even had, Roxette, Look Sharp on there, and you guys may make fun of me, but I that sound of the look.
I'm a pop guy. I like pop.
I love the look was just a great sound. I mean, that had such a swing and such a great tune. And I got sucked into that phase, but I had to kind of hide that from my metal buddies because they would.
It's a great record, man. Good music's good music, brother.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh,
so anyway, there you go. That's my.
I thought 1988 was an interesting year of records that there was a lot of my favorite artists made records in 1988, but they just were not good records. OU 812 is one. Skyscraper, not as good as Eat 'Em and Smile. Savage Amusement, not as good as Love at First Sting by Scorpions. It just seemed like that was happening over and over. That's why I had such a hard time to like, oh man, all these bands, I love these bands, but they're like not doing their best work here. But
that's a good point, because that's when I was thinking of this, it was that point that I was focused on was these may not be the great albums from these bands, but these were my bands at the time. And so do I go with something that I got into a little bit later that's a better album, like the Queensryche album? I didn't get into it in 88. A couple years later I started listening to that more, and that's where I was like, I'm just gonna go with my favorite bands and make sure that it's somewhat of a good album.
I know, that's same. I almost put Savage Amusement on there, but I wanted to kind of Traveling Wilburys in there because it was so different. And then the Nothing Shocking by Jane's Addiction. Like, that's a band in their prime. Where so many people on that list, when you look at the albums of 1988, it's like no one's in their prime at this point. Like, all of our favorite bands, to me, are not in their prime except for Jane's Addiction. Like, they're like killing it right there. you know.
Yeah.
So they're alternative. Like the whole thing is like alternative rock is starting to become something in '88, you know.
Yep.
But Bon Jovi was in their prime on
Yeah, that you know, and the first three Bon Jovi albums for me were fantastic. And New Jersey is when I love the album, but that's when I started, you know, that's when I started walking a little bit away from Bon Jovi at that time. I like that album a lot, but the next album, and I'm just like, well, I'm leaning more towards Manowar and, you know, some of these heavy, you know, Megadeth, Metallica. I was going in that direction, so I'm like, okay, well, it's not great stuff, but it's really good stuff, but it's not great stuff.
Also,
but anyway, I do love that album.
Also interesting about 1988 is like, to me, 1989 is a better year because you get Blue Murder, you got Badlands. I mean, even Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich.
Oh,
great
record.
It's
great record.
I wanted to put that on my thing, but it was like, it's 89.
Yep.
Yeah, Babylon AD. That's another one that I was.
Like so many better records in 89 than 88.
Yeah.
Well, next time we'll do 89.
Okay, let's do it.
Alrighty.
That's awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, we came to the segment where we're going to go, what are you spinning currently, Ryan? What do you currently got in your player, man? What are you listening to?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but.
Yep.
Oh, there it is. Big Star.
Big Star.
Nice.
Such a great record. Alex Chilton, Chris Bell. If you've never heard the Big Star #1 record, go check it out right now because it's.
I'm gonna have to. I'm writing it down.
Absolutely brilliant. Power. It's the seeds of power pop. All of us like in this chat today. It starts in 1972 with Big Star's #1 record.
Nice.
The record sold nothing. It was on a small label. It becomes a cult classic in the late 70s. And all the alternative bands of the 90s cite it because you can find a copy, you know, an original copy. Oh, I got the Big Star, right? And they finally reissued it in the 90s because all these like 90s alternative bands were citing it as something special. And it's fantastic. I mean, it's got a life of its own at this point. We lost Alex and Chris. The only one still alive is the drummer Jody Stevens, but it's fantastic record. It's just great power pop. If you've ever watched that 70s show, Hanging Out, the theme song, it's track 1, side 1.
Oh, nice.
Right on.
Yeah, so
nice.
Great band.
So what do you got, Phil? What you been listening to, buddy?
Well, this is what I've been listening to.
Nice.
Cray Street Kids, man.
Okay.
I've been listening to all 4 of those albums. I actually listened to all 5, the live album and everything yesterday, along with the 2 new solo albums. And I was like, holy crap, man.
Okay, that is too much of me singing one person.
I tell you what, it's brilliant, man. It's awesome stuff. I love that. And you know, I wanted to listen to all to get it fresh in my mind before we had our conversation, you know. But also, you know, when I was going through those albums, I forgot how great Rod Stewart was. So I went back and was listening to Rod Stewart, put on a couple greatest hits, and it's just, Rod Stewart is the other one that I've just been really digging lately.
Everything on Mercury Records from Rod Stewart, just buy it. Buy it.
Yeah.
And the Faces and the Faces. I mean, I put them all together in my record collection. Like it's Stewart Faces. You know, it's like the same players. It's like the same record. And they're all great. And they pick great songs, or they're either writing great songs or covering great songs. And Rod Stewart can sing the phone book.
Yeah. Love that guy.
Very cool.
Alrighty, Bob.
Oh, I ain't listening to anything. No, I'm just kidding. No, I've been listening to the new Robin McCauley record the last couple days.
Oh,
it's called Alive. There's the opening track's called Dead as a Bone. I probably listened to that thing a dozen times. It's just a great album from beginning to end. You know, it's everything you'd expect from McCauley. He's a great vocalist. There's some great riffs and some great melodies in that record. So check it out, man. It just got released in the last couple of weeks here. Robin McCauley. It's called Alive. That's the name of the album. It's a good record.
I'll check that out. he sang on a friend of mine's record. Greg Fox does the Renaissance Rock Orchestra, and Robin contributes the vocals on his stuff. So I'll definitely check that out. Robin's a nice guy by all available metrics.
Yeah, very cool guy. I had the honor of meeting him when he was with Survivor. So, and then
Cool.
he was with those guys for quite a while, actually. I think at one point. So that was a good time.
And the Macaulay Schenker albums.
Oh yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah, he's been involved in some great stuff. Yeah, I love his voice.
And let's not forget Black Swan. He's been doing that stuff too. So that's some good stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, Black Swan. Oh my gosh, yeah. I can't believe I forgot to bring that up.
Well, hey, Ryan, before we let you go, buddy, I do want to ask you something.
Sure.
Where can we find your stuff if people want to purchase it?
I have a Bandcamp thing. It's Ryan McKay Music, RyanMCKAY Music, at Bandcamp, at the Bandcamp thing. Find me on Facebook, Ryan McKay Music. My YouTube channel is Ryan McKay Music. So I encourage everyone to check out my YouTube channel, where I break down the elements of every song. Matter of fact, that's what I'm doing when we jump off this call, is doing the next video for that, where I break down everything and do a video on it. So yeah, Ryan McKay and the Broken Brains, available only on Bandcamp. Vinyl records are available, CDs available, all that stuff. So come find me and hang out. Fall of the City, I'm very proud of that record too.
Yes, make sure you buy the bonus. You get the bonus CD with that.
So. That's great. I got one more question for you before I let you go, buddy. So you're from Quincy, Illinois. I'm an Illinois boy myself. You ever been to the Quad Cities?
Played the Quad Cities. We played, I can't remember the name of the club, but we were up in Rock Island and Decatur. Is it Decatur? Boy, it's been a while. But yeah, I love the Quad Cities. What's cool also is Gene Simmons gives a shout out to the Quad Cities on Kiss Alive 1, which is my all-time favorite record. Come on, Quad Cities.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
playing in the Davenport or whatever,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
We played up there. I think we played in Rock Island.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I was all over that place. I love Illinois. Love all my friends and family still there. I love it.
Yeah, I went to high school in Rock Island. I graduated from Rock Island. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
That's
sure.
I thought
and
that
dude,
was.
We won't hold that against you.
Hey, we're both from Illinois, man. You're outnumbered, buddy.
Yeah.
Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. It's all the same.
I'm the flyover man. I'm a flyover state. So the music didn't hit here for like 5 years after everybody else, or maybe even longer. Everybody else got to experience it. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, I'm going, wow, this is great. Everybody's like, yeah, that's came out like 5 years ago, bud.
Yeah, we were in flyover. We grew up in flyover country.
Yeah, the flyover. People forget about how Kiss made their living in the beginning off of the Midwest, man. Detroit out here, they played Lincoln, Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska.
St. Louis.
The whole Midwest was accepted them long before they were accepted back on the coast. So,
hardworking people, man. Good Scrabble.
Yep.
People
loves good music.
They like their hard rock. They like bands that work hard. Like Cleveland is like the barometer of like, are you a hardworking band? They recognize hard work.
Yep.
They don't just go for fads. They like the hard. They like people that are working their asses off.
Yep. Well said. Well said.
Well, Ryan, man, it's been a pleasure, man. We really appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk with us.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Phil, Bob, you guys are awesome. Appreciate the opportunity. Anytime you want me back, I'm up for it.
All right. Well, we appreciate that, man. It was a pleasure.
Great. We'll definitely have you back.
All right, brother.
All right, guys.
All right.
Rock on. Peace.
Take it easy, man. Bye.
Bye-bye.